Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Come on over, baby, whole lot of shaking going on. Yes, I say, come on over, baby, baby, you can't go wrong. We ain't faking, whole lot of shaking going on.
Today we are going to talk about what is the biggest problem in America to the average American, which is the bums, the bums, the bums. You call them homeless, I call them filthy bums. How's that? How's that for a starter? I am compassioned out. I spent a good part of yesterday in San Francisco. I will not give you the graphic details of the bums who are exhibiting themselves to women and children, taking out their penises in the street, urinating in the street, defecating in the street. This is San Francisco. Crime-ridden, bum-ridden, broken roads. $10 billion budget for a city of about 1 million people. The money being stolen by the city mothers. Now I read this story. San Francisco to pay undocumented immigrant, that's an illegal alien bum, $190,000. Do you know why? Do you know why the city is paying $190,000 of the taxpayers' money? He claimed he was reported to federal immigration authorities in violation of the city's sanctuary city ordinance. Now, I would take the lawyers for this illegal alien. I would deport the lawyers as enemies of the state. But, of course, I'm just dreaming. See, I live in California where dreams are permitted. I'm dreaming for clean streets. I'm dreaming for streets that are safe. Do you know that there are districts in San Francisco, and I'll name a few, probably in New York as well, which has the highest homeless population in America, and we're going to talk about that. I have a list of the top 10 homeless cities in America with the highest populations. But I don't want to call them homeless. That implies they're entitled to a home. I don't know that a home is encoded in the Constitution, is it? Where's it written that you're entitled to a home? I mean, when I was young, I wanted to live in the, where was it? The West Village of New York. I wanted a brick-lined apartment. Just a studio, mind you, with a little garden. But I couldn't afford the $135 a month for that apartment. God knows what it costs today. So I had to live in Queens, in a neighborhood I didn't care for. And I had to go in a rotten subway to get into Manhattan to my job. That's the way it is. Then when you have a family, you can't afford to live in New York or Queens, so you move to Nassau or Suffolk, if you can afford to live there. That's how the suburbs develop. But if you tell that to the moronic millennials who think they're entitled to a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, they tell you that you're not being fair, that they're entitled to live in Manhattan because that's where they want to live. And if they want to live there, they should have a right to live there. And if they want health care, they have a right to health care. That's crazy. No, there's no right to anything on this earth. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is all you're promised. The rest is up to you. Now, I have had enough of the bums. There are people living in the Mission District in San Francisco and other districts, the Castro. They cannot come out of their houses. They're assaulted by bums. Bums are encamped on their doorstep. They're defecating on their doorstep, stealing their mail, threatening the owners. People ride this underground subway system here called BART. They get out on the 16th Street subway stop, I'm reading, and they're assaulted by a homeless army of violent felons who harass them, exhibit themselves, defecate, urinate. The people have created watch groups, 50, 60 people, liberals, all good liberals, bleeding heart liberals. They can't live in their own houses. They thought that by moving in there and cleaning up their house, the neighborhood would clean up, but it didn't. And the supervisors come over. The supervisors come over and do nothing. This is what liberalism does to a city. It destroys it. So I'm going to give you some statistics today on the bums. Tonight, the travel ban, by the way, goes into effect. Trump's travel ban was upheld. It goes into effect tonight. So they can bring in only a certain number of their relatives. What a great. You imagine how many they're going to bring in from these countries now? What a story that is. If you have any homeless bum horror stories from your city, Have you been assaulted? Has your property been damaged? I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative. Put a napkin over the mouthpiece, because this is a show that you can air your grievances on. What is your solution to the bum problem? I'm going to ask you a question. Here's one. Would rehabilitation bum camps help? Work camps for bums. Rehabilitation, you give them the medical care they need, but you don't give it to them in the streets. You don't let them pollute the hospitals. You don't let them threaten the EMT workers. You build shelters for them outside of city limits, in cheap land, in rural areas, and you house the homeless in these work camps. You give them all the medical care, social services care that they now get, but you do it in a one-stop shopping place. It's much more efficient. It cleans up the streets. What's wrong with that idea? I'll tell you what's wrong with that idea. The lying lawyers, the illegal lawyers, the ACLU. You talk about fake news. You know, the fake news girls are on the run right now. They're terrified. They know the people are onto them. I mean, I've been talking about them for years, but they're frightened now. You look at the Wolfies, the Sheepy Blitzers. You look at the Woodpeckers. They're frightened. They know the people know who they are. They've been exposed. But what about the fake lawyers? What about the fake lawyers who use their law degree to destroy society? Primarily those in the American Civil Liberties Union. They have nothing to do with civil and liberties. They're advancing a communistic agenda to destroy the society. Why are they free to ply their illegal trade in this country? Who gave them the power that overrides the power of the people? Who gave a few crazy lawyers in the ACLU the right to give more power to illegal aliens, more power to bums, more power to junkies, more power to molesters, more power to mass murderers than to the average person? Who gave them that power? Nobody. They just took it. Well, this is a new age. It's the age of Trump. It's time to take the power back. And it's not going to happen overnight. I got an email from someone. Again, you're invited to call the show. And I realize I'm not talking about Democrat, Republican, Republican, Democrat, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Republican, Democrat, Democrat, Republican, well, Democrat, right? Democrat, Republican, Republican. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about bums. The bums that have taken over the country. Top 10 cities with the most homeless population, as you well know. New York, number one. Over 70,000 bums in the streets. Los Angeles, 43,000. Seattle, 10,000. San Diego, 8,600. D.C., 8,300. These are known statistics. San Francisco, total homeless, about 7,000. That's nonsense. It's much higher than that. The real population of bums in San Francisco is between 10 and 20,000, 10 to 15,000. San Jose, Santa Clara, they say 6,500, much, much higher. Boston, 6,200 bums. Las Vegas, 6,200. Philadelphia, 6,100. Now, I recognize as a compassionate human being who takes care of animals that human beings come first, and I have compassion for human beings, even bums, even junkies. I have compassion for them. However, I have compassion for the social fabric of America. The cities are becoming uninhabitable because of liberalism, which is catering to the bums. And so I have the solution. I want to know what's wrong with that solution. Have you been assaulted by a bum? Has your wife been assaulted by a bum? Have you been unable to go into your house because of a bum living on your curb? Have you had your car trashed in San Francisco? Do you know how many windows in cars are broken every night in San Francisco? A hidden statistic. By armies of vagrants and bums. Do you know how many? The city hides that data. Got an email the other day tied into the travel ban coming in tonight to ban Muslims from certain Muslim-dominated countries. I guess you're not supposed to say that. And it's called A Bit of Mirth. And you'll know the reason for the conflict when you reach the end. It says, "Dear sir, I have a very complicated benefits question. Many years ago, I married a widow out of love who had an 18-year-old daughter. After the wedding, my father, a widower, came to visit a number of times, and he fell in love with my stepdaughter. My father eventually married her without my authorization. As a result, my stepdaughter became my stepmother, and my father became my son-in-law. My father's wife, also my stepdaughter, and my stepmother gave birth to a son who is my grandchild because I am the husband of my stepdaughter's mother. This boy is also my brother, as the son of my father. As you can see, my wife became a grandmother because she is the mother of my father's wife. Therefore, it appears that I'm also my wife's grandchild. Short time after these events, My wife gave birth to a son who became my father's brother-in-law, the stepson of my father's wife and my uncle. My son is also my stepmother's brother. And through my stepmother, my wife has become a grandmother and I become my own grandfather. In light of the above mentioned, I would like to know the following. Does my son, who is also my uncle, my father's son-in-law, and my stepmother's brother, fulfill the requirements for receiving child care benefits? Sincerely yours, a new immigrant. The answer, of course you qualify, new immigrant. I have arranged to start mailing the checks to all of you just as soon as you arrive here in California. Yours faithfully, Governor Jerry Brown. That's what's going on in the United States of America. The phone number again is 855-407-2882. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. We are talking about the biggest problem in America, which is the bums in the streets of San Francisco, New York. Name your city. I don't care what city you are in. Nobody will talk about the problem because of the laxness of liberalism, the proliferation of drug-addicted criminals in the homeless population is leading to a meltdown of the society that we all live in. Now, if you think this is happening by chance, you're mistaken. Do you know how much money is being made by middle women and middle men on the bum problem? You have any idea what kind of money the so-called homeless departments make? Well, let's take one city, for example. Here in San Francisco, one of the most dysfunctional cities in the world, a third world city posing as a first world city, with a Queen Anne front and a Mary Ann behind, we know that they spend at least $305 million in direct costs for bums. But what do they spend in indirect costs on the bums in the streets? What do I mean by indirect costs? Well, that would be police, that would be firemen, that would be EMTs, that would be legal services. How much does that cost us? Don't know. What about Berkeley, California? Berkeley, California, the little city filled with anarchists who put on masks and then teach at Berkeley by day. The city spends $17.7 million in federal, state, and local funds on an array of programs and services for bums. That works out to about $18,000 per homeless bum. $18,000 per homeless bum. And how much do the managers of these homeless services divisions make? Do you know what their salaries are? I do. Your hair will stand up when you find out all of these sanctimonious, fraudulent liberals who go to their committee meetings like they care about the bums. They don't care about the bums. It's a business to them. And what about the drugs and the alcohol that's sold to the bums? Where does that money go? Where do the welfare checks go? Probably to the drug dealers and the liquor stores, right? So you see, it's a big business to keep an entire underclass of bums living on freeways. If you drive from the Oakland airport along the corridor, the 80 corridor, over to Pinole or up in that area, you'll see an encampment of homeless bums off the highway that'll make you won't know what city you're living in. You'll say this can't be so. From Oakland to Berkeley, you can count one encampment after another living on the freeways. Now, I want to ask you something. Do you think that there are no health-related risks to the overall population, such as lice, such as typhus, such as hepatitis? Do you have any idea? Where are they defecating? Where are they urinating? Now, you understand that we have a broken-down society. You understand that the people that we entrust to run our governments are basically either incompetent or thieves or incompetent thieves. It's hard to call them anything else. Just as you've heard of fake news, we know about fake government. We know about fake lawyers. We know about fake doctors. There's fake everything in society, isn't there? Well, how are we going to fix it all at once? I guess we can't. But the first thing we must do is start telling you about the problem in order to solve the problem. Just as Trump was the first to popularize the notion of fake news and now he has them on the run because they were exposed just the other day by Project Veritas of making up the whole Russia collusion story. And I had the fellow on who did that underground tape, the tape that really broke open the whole CNN fake story on the Russia collusion. He admitted it was just for business. We're going to have to blow the lid off this bum story. It has to stop. Trump has to get around to fixing the streets of America. He has to clean up the homeless problem, and there are solutions to it. There are compassionate solutions to the homeless problem. You don't have to just wring your hands and say nothing can be done. There are solutions that can be given for the homeless bum horror. Now, many of them are mentally ill and or criminals hiding in the homeless population. There's a solution to that problem. And one of them is to either reopen the mental hospitals, which is not going to happen, or build entire homeless encampments outside of cities in lands that are inexpensive and move them there against their will with their lawyers. That's right. When Marvin, the ACLU attorney, opens his big fat trap and his big glasses get steamed up with outrage and indignation about how you're violating the constitutional rights of a bum who has the right to defecate in a mailbox or exhibit himself to your 5-year-old daughter, you say to Marvin, you know what, Marvin, you may have a point, but I'm going to ask you something. Why don't you move into the homeless encampment that we're building for them in the middle of the Nevada desert so you can give them the services that they require? We'll fix you up with email. We'll fix you up with Twitter. You can send pictures, whatever you want, Marv. And you could live out there with them and take care of them and their homeless needs out there. You could be their lawyer. Okay, you're going whether you want to or not because you know more about them than anyone else. You've shown that you know more about them, Marvin, from the ACLU. So by government decree, we're moving you into the homeless camp in the middle of the Nevada desert. It'll be air-conditioned, don't worry. We're not there to hurt you, not there to torture you. They're going to get the medical care, the social services care that they need, and they're going to work. They're not just going to sit on their behinds and shoot up drugs. They're going to work. They're going to clean up that camp. They're going to raise the food. They're going to cook the food. They're going to do everything that can be done in that environment to take care of themselves. And at the end of that time period, they will be somewhat rehabilitated, Marv. But you have to be rehabilitated, Marvin. And in order to rehabilitate you, we have to take away your law license, just temporarily, for having abused the taxpayer by using a law in order to destroy the law. You see, Marvin, something you didn't learn at Harvard Law is that in order to have civil rights, you have to have a civil society in order to have those rights. And you've destroyed the civility of our society, Marvin.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
I can guarantee you that the average city dweller in the United States of America cares more about the bums in the streets of their city than they do about the travel ban or illegal immigrants or Muslims or terrorism, because the bums, for example, in New York City, the bums in San Francisco, the bums in whatever the city may be, Los Angeles, affect people every day. And I don't mean the people who live in the towers and ride in bulletproof limousines, the ones who run the city. I'm talking about the average person who gets into a subway car to go to work, or walks in the streets, or rides a bus. Here in San Francisco, it is a disgusting wreck. You will ruin the whatever automobile you have, you will destroy your automobile if you drive across the city. The streets are broken. Where do the highway funds go? There are federal, state, and local highway funds. Who stole them? Who diverted the funds? You can't ride in a new car without breaking the alignment on your car. I know, because I have a new car. I had to bring it in 3 months later for a new alignment. The streets are broken. They're worse than Malaysia in San Francisco. And then if you get out of your car, if you're lucky enough not to be punched by a bum, or your wife is not assaulted by a bum, let's take liberal neighborhoods. San Francisco, there's no such thing as a non-liberal neighborhood. All liberal neighborhoods, all good people. All progressives. One is more progressive than the other. They trip over themselves to be progressive. They're so progressive it's painful. And yet they're forming neighborhood committees because they're afraid to go in and out of their houses. Bums are sitting on their doorsteps, defecating, urinating. Ask them. I'm not making this up for effect. The newspapers won't report it because they're there only to promote the Democrat Party and show you how great Dianne Feinstein is and Nancy Pelosi and how wonderful the city government is and how great Jerry Brown is. They'll never report the real crime in the city. Homeless crime is rising across America. I can give you the statistics if you'd like it. And they always say that the crime is rising because of third world income disparity, declining social services, and desperate poverty. All wrong. All wrong. Not all poor people become criminals. Not all poor people become bums. Not all poor people use drugs or become alcoholics. They didn't need social services in my father's generation who lived through the Depression. They'd rather throw themselves off a fire escape than take welfare. They worked jobs. They did whatever they had to do to survive. They didn't have government handouts everywhere you turned. Somehow the people got through the Depression. They didn't have social workers to sit there and give you Kleenexes and crying about your bad luck. People just did what they had to do and moved ahead in society. They did the best they could. But now, because of liberalism, everyone's a weeping willow. Everyone needs a handout. Everyone needs a tissue. Fine, we're a rich society, I know. If we didn't give so much money to the fill-in-the-blank, the military, or if those evil fill-in-the-blank corporations didn't take so much money. Who you mean, like Facebook and Google, which are monopolies and don't pay their fair share of taxes? Why don't you aim at that? Why don't you aim your ire at them? Why? Because they bought you off. They probably had you over to their headquarters to see how much they sympathize with you as the man who runs the homeless services in San Francisco and threw you a check. If they paid their fair share, there'd be more than enough money to take care of all these people, social services, etc. But that's not the issue. Homelessness is a misnomer. There's no such thing as homelessness. It's not correct. It's not a correct word. It's a word of the left. The correct word is bum. Bum, vagrant. There used to be vagrancy laws in America. Can you believe there was a time in America that if a bum slept on a bench in Central Park, took up the bench that was put there for hardworking citizens or retirees to sit and enjoy Central Park, a cop came along with a nightstick and tapped him on the shoe and made the bum get up in the morning and move on. He didn't let him lay there on newspaper taking up the whole bench and then walk into a bush like an animal to relieve himself. Nobody would have put up with that kind of behavior. So the cop tapped the bum on the foot. The bum knew to move on, or else he would have been given a shellacking, thrown into a paddy wagon, and put into a police station, and God knows what happened to him then. But it usually encouraged them to go get a job, like as a what? Dishwasher? Does anyone really want to wash dishes? No, but people wash dishes when they're desperate, and they have to. I once washed dishes when I was 14 years old because I lost money in a card game. I was afraid to go home. I lost all the money I had in a neighborhood card game. So I went to work in a luncheonette. I didn't mind. I was glad that the guy gave me the job. He felt bad for me, the street corner up there. He says, all right, Michael, here's the thing. Put your hands in there. I had dishwater up to my, whatever. I worked till midnight. I don't know what I made, a few bucks, who knows. My father called the police. He didn't know where I was. He came in white-faced. He didn't know where I was. Well, once he saw, there's a funny story. He called the cops. They didn't know where I was. Something happened. And somehow he got the word I was working in the candy store up on the corner there on Union Turnpike. And he came in and he looked over the counter. He didn't say one word other than, I understand, you're working. To him, work was sacred. That was enough. That explained everything. I didn't have to say a word to him. He didn't ask me why I was washing dishes. He didn't ask me, why didn't I call him? He just knew I was working. That was good enough for him. Because there's a dignity to work. And that dignity of work has to be taught to the bums in the streets of our cities. But it has to be taught to the bums in Congress. It has to be taught to the bums in the mayor's offices. It has to be taught to all the bums who steal our hard-earned taxpayer money and do whatever they want with it. That's what has to be done. And so this is the show now for you to call if you've been assaulted by a bum or you can't use your house because of a bum. And I want the progressives of our cities to call because they got nowhere to turn. No one will listen to them. I just got an email that 3 police units are being closed down in Sonoma County, California. You know, that's the wine country. Sonoma County is cutting the narcotics, gang crimes, and community-oriented policing units in order to put that money towards services for the bums. And do you know why they're doing it? Because they had town hall meetings with illegal aliens to ask illegal aliens how they wanted the city money spent. I'm not making any of this up. This is what happens when you let liberalism run wild. So I'm talking with you today about a really big problem that's not being discussed by anybody in the media. No one will touch it. When is the last time you heard any discussion about the bums in America on any radio show or any television show in this country? Not for a long time. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because for 8 years, the Messiah was running America. Remember that guy, the Messiah, the one who hated millionaires and billionaires, and then the minute he retired became a millionaire and billionaire by hanging around with them, flying on their jets, being on Necker Island, wrestling with the owner of Necker Island in a headlock. That was weird. Where was Michelle? But the point is, he actually is leading a lifestyle of a millionaire and billionaire. I mean, it took a $70 million book advance, him and the wife, because he's for the poor. Are you kidding? Homelessness, if you want to call it that, skyrocketed during the 8 years of the Messiah's reign. Did you know that? That's what liberalism has done. They tell you one thing and they do another. Now, if you want to be blind to it, go ahead. Go buy a house in Noe Valley in San Francisco and think you're going to live in paradise. Go buy a little house in the Mission District after saving all your money and see what a beautiful lifestyle you're going to have when you can't go in or out of your house, when your mail is stolen, when a man masturbates in your doorway or defecates in your doorway. I'm sorry to make it so graphic, but that's what's required for America to understand what's going on. I've had it with San Francisco. I'm very close to never going over that bridge again. I'm very close to leaving my apartment. I cannot take it anymore. You can't believe it unless you actually live around it. The open drug use, the filth, the risk to our health in every park, in almost every street of the city. It's out of control. And what do the so-called leaders of the city do? Nothing. They ride around immune to it all because they're never confronted by it. Do you know how much money is involved? Billions of dollars. Billions of dollars is spent on this problem, and much of it goes into the hands of the middle girls, the middle women and the middle men in between the bums and the civilian population. So I'm going to open it up to the callers on the show right now. WABC, Alex, tell us your bum horror story.
Yeah, so I was walking home 2 weeks ago, and I'm with my girlfriend. We have our groceries. You know, we live in Chelsea, New York City, nice neighborhood, kind of nice. And we're walking home. I noticed a man laying down, pleasuring himself on our doorstep, and there's a school, 2 blocks away, and there's school children around. I call the police, 911. 5 minutes goes by. I call them back. 15 minutes later, police show up. They go talk to the man. Don't put him in handcuffs. Don't do anything. They talk to him. He's still laying down, exposed. And then they eventually get him to stand up, and they said that they were not going to arrest him. So I pleaded with them to please arrest him because it's out of control. It's ridiculous. And eventually they did. But I had to plead for them just to arrest the man.
And where do you live in the Chelsea district of New York City, a very expensive, beautiful area?
That's correct. It was.
Yeah.
It was. It's gotten progressively worse in the past 6 months.
Well, wait a minute. It used to be marginal, then it became yuppified. What happened? It's gone downhill under de Blasio? Is that what you're saying?
I've been in the city for over 10 years, and it's gone downhill in the past year. It's just plummeted. It's disgusting. And I'd like.
Do you know how much money cities spend on services for these bums? Between jail, support services, ERs, housing, and they do get housing money, sheriffs, homeless services, food stamps, general relief, paramedics, public health, mental health, hospital services. Ask the nurses what they have to put up with. Think about how much it costs per year. Are you ready for the amount? I have the answer for you for one small city. One small city, San Francisco, spends $45,000 a year for each bum in the streets. Do you know that? Now, how much money of that money goes to the people who provide the services? The businesses that have been created to cater to the bums. There are many businesses that live off the bums, and that's why they keep the bums in the streets. You know that. Okay, well, if anyone else has a better solution than I do, I'm open for it. We're trying to solve problems here. I'm trying to organize America's first radio town hall on the bum problem. I want creative solutions for solving the bum homeless problem in America. I'd like you to sign up by calling up 855-400-SAVAGE. I'm not just complaining. I've given you a solution, and I'll give it to you again. And tell me what's wrong with the solution. Put aside the ACLU for a minute, because we can deal with them. They're nothing but a bunch of sick lawyers. So here's the problem, the bums. What's the solution? There used to be vagrancy laws in America. Whoever said vagrancy laws are illegal? The ACLU. They said that a bum has the right to defecate in the street, urinate in the street, exhibit himself in the street. A bum has the right to live in the street. That's not true. They made up the law out of whole cloth. They said it's their First Amendment right or whatever it is, the right to free assembly. That's wrong. You have no rights when you're not civil. There are rights and there are responsibilities. In order to have rights, you need responsibilities to go with them. I've told you that there are laws on the books about riots. You cannot cross state lines to incite a riot without going to federal prison. The problem is that they have not enforced these laws. They were passed in the 60s because out-of-town agitators, communists from Chicago in that case, were going to smaller cities and agitating riots. Well, in the 60s, laws were passed that made that a federal crime, and they're still on the books. Well, the same exists today on a national, on a local level, and a state level. Okay, so there are laws on the books about vagrancy that can be enforced by the police, and we can't put the bums in prison, in work camps rather, along with all of the services that they're needing. Put them in one place. It's far more efficient. Give them the housing that they need in a work camp, but they have to work. They cannot just sit around and moan about their problems and get the group therapy and this therapy and that therapy. I go to work every day from 6 in the morning. How about you? Why doesn't the goddamn bum work? Because we don't require the bum to work. Now let's turn it to the immigration problem. Do you have any idea what these immigrants are doing to this country? Don't give me the garbage. They all come here to work. Do you know how many members of their family are on some form of public assistance? Do you know what the average immigrant family costs this country? Don't tell me that it's not true. And don't call me a racist. Because the fact of the matter is money and dollars are clearly to be found. And the amount of money they're stealing from the taxpayer in this country is beyond anything you'll ever imagine. I'll have the answers for you when I return right here in the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Is the Savage Nation. And at the top of the food chain, we have phonies like Mark Zuckerberg, who lives in a total unreal world, a young boy who was very smart, who built a big business, got very lucky very fast, who was so lost in his own ego that he's now saying Facebook can play a role that churches and Little League once filled. Meanwhile, telling us we should have open borders, along with George Soros and the other so-called progressives. We should have open borders while he builds high walls around his house in San Francisco. We should take care of the poor while his company avoids taxes, to the best of my knowledge, in every way they possibly can. They're monopolies. Everyone knows they're a monopoly. Everyone knows that they're too big. And they're too big, and they need to be broken up in order to give other people the chance to survive. If you have a homeless or bum problem, I'd like to hear about it. Colorado, KVOR, Colorado. Mark, go ahead, make it quick, please.
Dr. Savage, in my judgment, based on what's happening here in Colorado, marijuana and the marijuana movement is intimately tied to bums and homelessness. I mean, there is now, we have been flooded with any kind of homeless problem you can name now. Not quite the severity of San Francisco.
Well, I got to go back to 1998 when the so-called medical marijuana initiatives were brought into California and one other state. It was done by George Soros. I argued with the head of the medical marijuana initiative at the time. I said, this is nothing but drug legalization. It's going to cause a societal meltdown. It was George Soros who gave $1 million through a front group to bring marijuana into cities. Right now, it's becoming a national phenomenon. You think marijuana is benign? It is not. It is the most dangerous of all drugs. You ask every drug addict in any rehab facility in America how they started on harder drugs. They all started with marijuana. This is not a ludicrous argument. This is a factual argument. Marijuana is the most dangerous drug in the world because it is an entry-level drug. Now, don't start arguing with me about the medical uses and how good it is. I know all about it. I know all about all the fractions of cannabis. So then you break out the fractions that have medicinal properties, not the fractions that get you high, and you sell them as legitimate drugs. You sell them in pharmacies. You eliminate the THC, use the other components, and you make them medicines, pharmaceuticals. And that's the end of the medical marijuana myth. It also stops the drug use and, of course, the fortunes that are being made without taxation across America. We're talking about the bum problem. Have you been assaulted by a bum in your city? This is the Savage Town Hall on solving the bum problem.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Well, the East Coast girls are hip. I really dig those styles they wear. And the Southern girls with the way they talk, they knock me out when I'm down there. The Midwest farmers' daughters really.
Yeah, all right, we got it. Beautiful America. Great country. Everyone's on drugs. They're fat. 300-pounders. I don't know. The country's falling apart. Criminals running every city in the country. Do you know how much San Francisco spends on bums? Oh, don't call them homeless to me. Homeless implies they're entitled to a home. No one's entitled to a home. You work for a home. Did you know that? Oh, I know. In communist Russia, everyone was entitled to a home. In communist Cuba, they're entitled to a home. Not the kind of home you would live in. So don't tell me about homeless. That's a construct of the Marxist revolution. City of San Francisco, which has the worst per capita bum problem in America, maybe in the world, spends $250 million a year to solve the problem of the bums in the streets. And no one knows where the money goes. I do. They can't track the money, but I can give you some idea of where the money goes. There are 8 city departments filled with bureaucrats that oversee 400 contracts to 76 private organizations, most of them so-called nonprofits. Wait till you see the salaries they make, that deal with the bum problem. They call themselves homeless services, outreach, this and that. These are all liberal departments, all do-gooders, tripping over themselves to show how good they are. And what's even more interesting to me is that one of the sickest, wackiest supervisors in the city, he is so far to the left that he makes, I don't know, pick your most favorite leftist politician. Now go to the left of him by several degrees, and you'll see Supervisor Aaron Peskin in San Francisco. There's not been a progressive idea that he has not floated and run with because he's such a good man. But recently he called 911 because it was in his backyard. You see, a homeless man, a bum, was naked from the waist down. His legs were smeared in feces. And the bum was standing near Mr. Peskin's house on the Filbert Steps on Telegraph Hill, screaming obscenities and blocking the path of passerbys, we have to assume including the esteemed supervisor. Now, of course, the police can't do their job. The city spends $250 million a year. No one knows where the money goes. Same problem, New York City, L.A., Seattle, San Diego, Las Vegas, District of Columbia, Chicago, San Jose, Santa Clara, Boston, Honolulu, Savannah, Santa Ana, Nassau, Suffolk counties, Babylon, Islip, Huntington, New York, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Largo, Pinellas County, Florida, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Sonoma County. This is in the wine country. You have no idea what's going on up in the wine country. You have no idea what has happened because of stupid liberalism. I do. It is the biggest problem on it. See, most Americans want a travel ban and they want to be protected. That's true. But they're not affected really by terrorism on a daily basis. What they are affected by on a daily basis is the bums and the broken streets. The money is being stolen. The federal, state, and local highway funds are being stolen by God knows who in the cities. Again, I tell you, I went to San Francisco for the day yesterday, a city I normally love. I have a place over there. It's gotten so bad that my car went out of alignment again from driving on Lombard and Van Ness. Why are the streets so broken? Where'd the money go? Then go back up on the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. I think I've got to do a YouTube on this one. I've been complaining about it long enough. I want you to just drive onto the Golden Gate Bridge, an iconic structure known around the world, from San Francisco, and take a look at the roadway. It's been like this for over 10 years. You'll break an axle going onto that bridge. Where'd the money go? Where does the Golden Gate Bridge Authority hide the money for repairing the roads? Why are the roads broken? Don't tell me there's no money. There's billions of dollars being, well, whatever you want to say. But now let's go back to the streets themselves. The average person, I don't care if they're liberal or conservative or this or that, understands that their quality of life is diminished, that they take their life in their hands walking in most districts of San Francisco. At any time, someone can punch you in the chest or stab you or cut your face. If you think I'm making it up, ask the police. Ask the police how many assaults are reported and are not reported in this city. Find out how many people are assaulted directly or indirectly, whether that be assault be a punch, a kick, or assaulted by someone defecating in front of them or exhibiting themselves in front of their wife or daughter. That is an assault, by the way. And the cops cannot report it as an assault because all the city service agencies that live off the bums have told them that they can't report it as a crime. So what are the solutions? This is the Savage Town Hall on solving the bum problem in America. I have a solution. I'm not wringing my hands. There used to be vagrancy laws in America. First of all, you start by reintroducing vagrancy laws in the era of Trump. That's number one. You clean up the cities immediately. You start at the bottom and you work your way right up. So what do you do when you arrest them? You can't put them in the prisons. They'll destroy the prisons. Do you think the average prisoner wants to be around someone who's insane and defecating on themselves? The average prisoner does not want to be around that. Does a prison guard want to be around that? Would you take such a job? No. So you can't put them in there. So where do you put them? Common sense would tell you that any sane society that has armies of bums who are not able to take care of themselves have to take care of them. You have to provide them the services that they need, medical, social, etc. So you build work camps for them outside of cities where the land is cheap, and you forcibly put them in the work camps against the cries of Marvin and the ACLU. And you force them to work in the work camps. I don't care if they bellyache, lights on at 6 in the morning. Go work in the vegetable garden at 7 in the morning. Whatever it requires, you're going to feed yourself, or you're not going to eat that well. You may eat a basic amount of food, but you're not going to get all the goodies that you'd get if you work in that garden. And you absolutely give them the alcohol rehab treatment, the drug rehab treatment that they need, and then you see what happens. You can clean this country up. It'll take a while, but it can be done. Now, of course, I understand that there's an army of lawyers from NYU and Harvard and Bolt Law School and Berkeley, etc., who will be screaming that you're violating the civil rights of the bum. They are wrong. Because in order to have a civil right, you have to have a civil society. They are destroying the civility of the society. They are not civil, and they're not living in a society. And so, therefore, the society itself has a right to have a civil society, the taxpayer. The tax-paying woman who killed herself to buy a house in one of the districts in a city, whether it be San Francisco's Noe Valley or the Mission District, buys a house, cleans it up, tends the garden, paints, has the house painted, goes to work 12 hours a day, and she comes home to bums who exhibit themselves in the street, or bums who use their stoop as a toilet, or steal their mail, or harass them. You think it isn't happening? Ask the police. Ask the police if you think I'm making it up. So, no, you have to clean this problem up, and you have to put the lawyers into the work camps with them. You have to say to the lawyer, look, you're a very good lawyer. I understand you're a red diaper doper baby. You grew up in a communist home in New York, and you think that you now run the country. But guess what? The times, they are changing. Oh, yeah, the times, they are changing, Marv. So what we're going to do for you is this. We want you to use your law degree to the best possible advantage. So we're going to put you in the work camp with the bums against your will. And so that way you can give them the best legal advice possible on site. They don't even have to call you or email you. You could be living with the people that you love so much. And you could be sending emails, and you could plant stories on CNN. You can get Sheepy Blitzer to cover the story about how bad life is in the work camps. You can get all of Jake Tapper to cover it, show how evil the society has become. But you'll be living with the people that you service so well. That's one solution, isn't it? And if you think I'm being facetious, you're wrong. I'm not being facetious. This is a societal issue that has mushroomed to the point of almost no return. Almost no return. Nothing is at a point of no return. Everything can be turned around. I have emails coming into me from listeners in Sonoma County. That's above, if you know San Francisco, then there's Marin County, then Sonoma. Someone sent me this email and said it's frustrating that the government actually pays people to go find people eligible for benefits because the eligible people are too lazy to go find benefits for themselves. Last year, the county of Sonoma, taken over by psychopathic liberals, sent bilingual eligibility workers to colleges in the Spanish classes to recruit for more bilingual eligibility workers to go find even more Spanish-speaking illegal aliens to give taxpayer money to. I'm not creating any of this. Check it out if I'm making it up. You want to hear more? This just came in, again, from a corrections facility deputy sheriff in the Bay Area of California. Homeless inmates keep getting disability payments after 30 days of incarceration, in spite of the fact that it's supposed to be cut off. And then if it does get cut off, for example, if a county employee who's good puts a stop to the disability payments, the county pays a welfare worker to hold the recipient's hands and take them over to the Social Security office to get the money reinstated. Wait, it gets even better to show you what liberalism actually does. There's even more. What about the ER workers, the people in these ambulances? Do you know that they have the hardest job in America? Do you know that homeless bums call ambulances every day to take them to the emergency rooms for any little malady that they care to call about? You know that firefighters and paramedics have to go pick them up if they just call them? They make a medical 911 call saying, oh, I have a headache. I woke up, I don't feel good. These poor guys have to come in an ambulance and pick up the trash of society. They have to risk getting hepatitis or AIDS and have to put up with their abuse. They throw feces at the ER workers. What kind of society is this anymore? A society that's devolving, and there is a reason for it, because liberalism is a mental disorder, and liberalism is the problem. The solution is to solve the problem because the liberals will not solve the problem. And now I want to tell you about an important product. It's the middle of the night. For those of you who work, and you toss and you turn, you're covered in sweat. Now, you could run the AC or a fan all night, but who can afford that? Most of you can't. Well, get rid of your heat-trapping mattress and sleep as cool as the other side of the pillow as I do on my Casper mattress. It's really a great mattress. You see, it's 2 high-tech foams, which guarantee you that you will sleep cool, comfortable, and fully supported every night. It comes to you shipping for free in a box that's so small you're not going to believe it even holds a mattress. And Casper does that so you can try it for risk-free for 100 nights in your own home. If you don't love it, they'll come pick it up and refund you every dime. From its breakthrough design and superior quality to its packaging and 100-night in-home trial, it is no wonder that Casper was named one of the Fast Company's 50 most innovative brands of 2017. Try your Casper mattress for 100 nights in your home with free shipping and returns. All you got to do is go to Casper.com, use the code SAVAGE if you love me in the show. That's right, use the code SAVAGE, and you're going to get $50 towards the purchase of your mattress. That's Casper.com, code SAVAGE, and get $50 towards the purchase of your mattress. Casper.com, terms and conditions apply. This is the Savage Nation. When I return, I will take your calls on the homeless horror stories in America that will not be told by Sheepy Blitzer and the Seven Dwarfs on CNN, right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. We're talking about the bum problem in the streets of America. We're talking about the major cities. We know that it's a lifestyle problem for the average taxpayer. And we all know that the violence level is getting higher and higher. People are being assaulted. They're not reporting the assaults. They're being punched. They're being kicked. We understand that this is a problem. And everyone's saying we don't know what to do. Give them housing. No, don't give them housing. I'm sorry. There's plenty of shelters. They don't use them. We heard from the liberals that they have a right not to use a shelter, that they have a right to sleep in the street. Where did that right come from? What do you mean they have a right to sleep in the street? Who pays for the sidewalk? Who pays for the police? Who pays for the EMT? Not the bums. No, we own the streets. We pay for the social services. We have to have a voice in these social services. We hear about prison overcrowding, don't we? Over and over again. Well, do you know that most of the prison overcrowding is not a result of people actually being arrested for felonies? Do you know that many jails, mainly on a local level, are filled with bums who are thrown in there because of drug crimes, alcohol-related crimes? They come in, they get good medical care. The hospitals have to receive them. They get hot food, showers, they get new clothes. Then they leave and go back to the streets and they drink and do drugs. Then they get picked up again for crimes. Then they get taken to jail. They get a nice treatment, showers, food, medical care. All the screaming little lilies from the social services ask them how they feel and why they're like that. Would they like some rehab? You understand that's a problem? I'm a compassionate person, but enough is enough. The streets are uninhabitable in most cities of America, and no one will talk about it for fear to be called a fascist or a this or a thatist. Well, I'm a realist, and the streets are uninhabitable in most cities, unless you are, of course, riding around in a bulletproof limousine, and you never go into the streets. And you go from your mayor's office down to a rich person's house and then give a speech about the millionaires and billionaires. Of course, not all homeless people are bad, but the problem is bad, and there needs to be a solution. The solution is, I told you, build villages, if you want to call them, whatever the name is, Mystery Village or Magical Village. Call it, but we know what it is. You build the villages outside the cities in lands that are cheap, and you then have a one-stop shop for the medical care, for the feeding, for the showers, the social services, no alcohol, no drugs, and you make them work. They have to work in those villages. They don't get to lay around and have a good time talking to their friends while you're working or I'm working. They work. They grow their own food. Even give them a hammer and a nail. Oh, I can't do it, then you'll sleep outside tonight. You'll have to do it. Here's a hammer, here's a nail. If not, here's a tent. You have a choice. Richard, KLIF, it's time for the harsh medicine to save this country. I know you disagree with me. You have the time on this national show. Tell us what you believe.
Well, I agree with you that the social services, the government benefit from the homeless. I look at it as them being in a grease pit. They want to keep them in the grease pit because they make money off the homeless, no question about it. But I do disagree with you by saying that they're all bums. They're not all bums. I would say minority are bums. Here in Dallas, and they underreport the homeless, there's 12,000 homeless men and women and children in Dallas.
So in other words, they're all American heroes. We should build a new Mount Rushmore with homeless people's faces on it. They're more noble than the working person. Is that what you're saying?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Okay, so we're having a town hall meeting of sorts on the Savage Nation, and most of you agree we have a bum problem that's out of control in most cities of America. It's not really hitting the rural areas because the ne'er-do-wells of the rural districts of America, the losers in other words, drift to the cities where they get all of the help that they may need for free and the support that they may need for free, and they don't work. They get loads of money. San Francisco spends $250 million on bums, and they don't know where the money goes. Now, you add that up, and you say this is unsupportable, which it is. This is the end line of the arc of liberalism. The cities have to be taken back by the taxpayer. And this cuts across all political lines. It doesn't matter if you're a progressive, because even a progressive's day can be ruined by a bum who has a feces on his feet and is running at him with a hypodermic needle, whether it be on Telegraph Hill or in the Mission District. Even progressives have had enough in San Francisco. They are forming local neighborhood watch groups. It doesn't do a thing because the cops are powerless to arrest the bums. The cops are powerless because the most psychopathic in the city become supervisors. If you listen to the crazies who run this city and the kind of things they say at meetings, you would not say that they don't belong in a nut house. It's the supervisors who belong in a nut house. They're the reason that the cops can't do their job. There used to be vagrancy laws. They may still be on the books. They should be reinstated. And the vagrants need to be put not in prisons, but in so-called homeless villages, call them what you want, where they will receive all the care that they need in one place. They will be taken off the streets. They'll be put there against their will. You heard me. Against their will. You heard me. Because in order to have civil rights, you need to have a civil society, or there are no rights. I went to the city yesterday. It was worse than ever. I've been telling you about it. You take your life in your hands. You're going to laugh at these stories, and you say it doesn't affect you. But I get emails from New York from people who can't believe what the streets are like under de Blasio, the liberal, or in San Francisco. It's not that the liberals are good. It's not that the liberal establishment really cares about the bums. They don't care one way or the other. There's fortunes being made off the bums. Not to mention the drugs that are being sold to the bums and the alcohol that the bums use that somehow filters or finds its way up, you know what I'm saying, up to the top of Pacific Heights. Let's put it that way. In other words, it actually flows uphill. The money flows uphill through the social services, through the use of the, it flows. It actually goes against gravity. It flows uphill somehow. So we, the people, are stuck with the problem, but we can save the country by taking it back. Whether you call it in the age of Trump or not doesn't matter. Even progressives have had enough in San Francisco. I'll give you a little story, another one, a little tiny one, not a big deal. I went to the city yesterday with Teddy and someone else, and I could have eaten in any restaurant in the city, the most expensive meal in the city. Instead, I went to McDonald's. Now, I went to McDonald's. You say, what, are you crazy? You go to San Francisco to eat at McDonald's? Actually, yes. It's the first time I felt good in 2 weeks. It was because I was able to forget everything and forget all my problems. So I ordered the dog 2 hamburgers with no salt and pepper and no sauce. I got myself whatever I get, doesn't matter, and a big diet soda. And I tear up the burger for him and put it on a piece of paper on the floor. It was filled with bums. I don't know where they get the money from. I was dining with the bums. I wanted to see what it's like to eat in a homeless shelter, which is what McDonald's is in San Francisco. Mixed in with Europe. Poor Europeans eat there because it's a cheap meal. It's a very high-quality meal, by the way, for the money. In case you don't know it, it's actually a high-protein meal for the money. It's actually a good deal. But you should see the people coming in with their pants hanging down underneath their behind. I mean, really, I don't want to get too graphic. And they're talking to themselves, and they're looking at you. You know, if you look the wrong way, they could pull out a knife and stab you in the face. I was actually afraid one of them would kill my dog. You have those vibes. So, okay, just the McDonald's down around, I don't even know the street. I forget the name of the street, wherever it is, near the financial district. Not a big deal. But you see, there's no way to control them because the police can't do their jobs. That's the problem. KSFO, Daryl, tell us your bum horror story. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Dr. Savage. I've been listening to you since I was a little kid in the 90s, driving around with my dad. But
well, I'm glad to hear that you've evolved into a tax-paying human being. But look what our cities have become.
Oh, tell me about it. I was indoctrinated at a young age, for better or for worse. But anyways, I was driving about a year ago around San Jose, 881st Street area. Pulled up to a stoplight, and there's an ambulance on my right. I look over. There's the paramedics on the ground wrestling with a bum on the sidewalk, half hanging in the bushes, half hanging out into the street. His EMT is there with him. Little small woman. I mean, it wasn't her fault. Not much she could do. I mean, like 90 pounds soaking wet. I'm with my dad and my fiance. I hop out of the truck. My dad hops out of the truck. I run over. I dive in, try to help this guy out because it's just like a death struggle. Finally, paramedic supervisor shows up first.
Wait. Who was the bum fighting with? A cop or an EMT worker?
No, it's paramedic, and then paramedic supervisor show up. So still no SJPD.
Well, wait, you lost me. Is the bum fighting with a paramedic? Is that who he's fighting with?
Yes, paramedic.
Okay.
Paramedics had been called because this guy was, passed out in the middle of the street blocking traffic. So paramedics show up, and he's not exactly enthused to cooperate. And then that's when I showed up. I just happened to be a bystander and see it all in the middle of that. And then San Jose PD show up. First two police show up and stand around and watch. They don't do anything. Third cop finally shows up, walks up to us, and tells me to let go, and he'll get in. And I'm like, I'm not letting go. How about you get in on this guy so these two other guys don't get hurt? This guy's bleeding, covered in urine. God only knows what else is wrong with him. And it speaks to.
I'm surprised the cop didn't arrest you for interfering with the bum rights. No, I'm surprised they didn't have you arrested for assaulting the bum.
Well, trust me, there were plenty of people videotaping it. I did worry a little.
Oh yeah, of course. Everyone's a Cecil B. DeMille now with an iPhone.
Well, yeah.
So how did this end? Did it end well for the cop, or end badly for the EMT, or end well for the bum, or bad for the bum?
No, it ended. The cop finally dove in. They finally arrested the guy. Paramedics got up, and he's all dirty, and he's cut and bruised and everything. He thanks me. Paramedic supervisor thanks me. EMT thanks me. The cops could care less. They take a little statement, but they don't acknowledge the paramedics. They don't thank the guys.
Well, okay, that's neither here nor there. The cops didn't cause the problem. I mean, I'm not going to make them the bad guy. They have a no-win situation. The problem is the supervisors and the mayor of the city. That's the problem.
Well, yeah.
And the accompanied problem. I thank you for being a good Samaritan. We're all afraid to be a good Samaritan today for fear that we'll get sued by one of the vermin who have put the bums in the streets, the lawyers. I was reading a story the other day, and I read this. It said, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Allegedly, it came from Ben Franklin, but then I did a little more research, given that I'm a scholar by training, and Ben Franklin never said it. But I'll repeat it again, because it describes what we are living through in this country. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. We are the lambs. In many cases, our two wolves are our senators. No matter what we want, they vote on what we shall have, and they eat us for lunch by stealing our money and spending it any way they want. WABC, Pat, line 3, you're up on the Savage Nation.
Michael, how are you? I got to verify exactly what you're saying as far as San Francisco being completely out of control with the homeless, or with the bums. And I agree with calling them bums because that's exactly what they are. My daughter worked since she was 16 years old. She got a master's degree out of the same alma mater as you, Queens College. Did well for herself, saved up a couple of bucks, got a Ford Mustang to go take a tour in California. It was a dream of hers. Went to San Francisco, and she said the bums were out of control, aggressive, angry.
Yeah, I have friends from other states who come here, and they say that the bums are more aggressive in this city than any city in the country. And there is a reason for that. There is a reason that the bums in San Francisco are more aggressive and more disgusting than in other cities. There's a reason for it, and that's because of tolerance and ultra-liberalism.
To take the A train to work where bums would be masturbating or like demanding money, and she said San Francisco is so much worse than that. She'll never go back.
It is. It's a hidden fact. The newspapers don't cover it because there are no newspapers in this city. They're wholly owned mimeograph sheets of the Democrat establishment, and they don't want to embarrass the Congress women or the senators or the mayor or the governor. So they keep everyone sort of in the blind. There are no pictures of these problems. Thank you for the call. I think I'm going to have to start doing a Project Veritas of my own. I will have to take pictures of the entranceway to the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco, because you think I'm exaggerating, don't you? I threw the alignment out on a new car twice in the last few months. Just driving on Lombard, Van Ness Avenue, two major thoroughfares. And worst of all is the entranceway to the Golden Gate Bridge. They will not repair a pothole. Where did the billions of dollars go that are there for federal, state, and local highway funds? I don't know where the money goes. I can just imagine. Now, when you say, you use the word corruption, if the city says they spend $250 million on so-called homeless services, if you want to call it that, and this is from the most liberal of all the supervisors, and he says they don't know where the money goes, they also know that the money's being filched or stolen. No one knows where the money goes. $250 million on the bums? And you're telling me a solution that I have is the wrong solution? Why? Why is my solution wrong? I don't understand why my solution is wrong. It would clean up the streets. It would make the streets habitable again. It would give the unfortunate bums the services that they need in one place rather than in 100 different places. But most importantly, we'd have the streets back again in the cities, and that's good for progressives and for everyone else. The streets would be safer. I don't understand the problem. The only problem is the lawyers. And I mean the most extreme lawyers who go to work for these New York Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. These are non-elected agitators with law degrees. Nobody elected them to have the power over the streets that they have. Who elected these guys from NYU or Columbia or Harvard to dictate the terms of our street life? Who gave them that power? They took it. Did anyone give them the power to blow up our Ten Commandments monuments? No, they took it. I don't want to make any more metaphors than I have to. I think I've made enough good points that I don't have to undermine my own points by getting a little more graphic of what I'd like to see done to the ACLU and the lawyers. Okay, I'll leave it at that. They ought to thank God, though, that Trump has not recreated HUAC in this country and let me run it. That's all I can say. You ought to thank God that Trump is not giving me a job to set up and run a new HUAC. That's all you should say. Every night you should go to sleep and thank your tooth fairy that I've not been given that job. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Look, we're going to talk about a very serious social problem, which is the homeless problem. But all of you who are listening are probably workers in one way or another, or retirees. And you know that I have a great passion for living a healthy lifestyle, which includes clean eating. You know that. And Super Beets is one of the most impressive functional foods I've ever seen. That's why I advertise it. It affects the blood flow. Beets are loaded with dietary nitrates, and they convert to nitric oxide in the body. You may know by now that nitric oxide helps support healthy circulation and healthy blood pressure levels, and that Super Beets is the most convenient way to get these dietary nitrates to specifically help support healthy blood flow and circulation. Super Beets works 3 times faster to give you results that you feel, and it tastes great. I take Super Beets every day. I can feel the energy and stamina it gives me within only 20 minutes, and I want you to feel it too. So all you got to do to get a 30-day supply for free, which comes with your first order, and it's backed by a money-back guarantee. You're also going to receive a free book, Beat the Odds, free nitric oxide indicator strips to see the difference for yourself. In other words, you can check it out. And free shipping. Love the results that you feel. They're guaranteed, or you're going to get your money back. Call 800-481-0504. I better read it slower. 800-481-0504, or go to SavageLovesBeats.com. That's SavageLovesBeats.com. Now back to the issue of the bums. Tim on KSFO. Tim, you were homeless for 5 years?
I am homeless currently. I'm sitting in the bushes now listening to you on the radio because I don't want to go hang out with the rest of them. They're evil people. Long before the drugs, long before the alcohol, long before any undiagnosed medical condition, long before the bad parenting, these were just bad people. These kids in the 3rd grade that would knock your books out, knock your lunch off, splash mud on you. Everybody knows these kids. They're the same ones.
So Tim, you sound like a rational, law-abiding man who's living in the bush. What would your solution be, Tim?
I agree with you. I've been wondering why we don't have shanty towns for 20 years. Put these people somewhere.
Well, but here's the problem. You'd have to go there as well. You don't want to be around them.
If most of them were gone, that'd clear things up for me and maybe the other 10 or 20 people in San Jose like me that are just on hard times and trying to get through life and get through the next day without
I understand, without hurting yourself or others. Tim, how did you wind up in the streets?
Bad decisions. Like everybody else, every single one of them out here made bad choices. The difference is they're running around blaming everybody else, making it everybody else's problem, not theirs. Talk to most of them. Find one that's coherent. Talk to them. It's somebody else's problem. No, I made bad decisions. Here I am.
I'm sorry to hear it, because you sound like a decent person who shouldn't be living in the bush.
Well, I'm trying to get out of this. I'm going to be in Idaho soon if I can help it. God help.
Idaho, you have a job up there waiting for you?
There's work up there. I don't know if I can get hired, but there's work up there. There's a church up there, and they need me. I was up there last year. Hiked all.
See, here you are. You're looking. You know, Tim. If I could help you, I would, but I certainly don't have the capacity to reach out and give you any kind of financial help. But I'm sure there are people listening to this show right now who are touched by your story, and I wish there was some direct way to help you, but there is not. I want to thank you for picking yourself up by your bootstraps. Bums overrun San Francisco, $250 million spent each year on homeless. I listed it on michaelsavage.com. Take a look at the picture. That long train that the bums put together of stolen shopping carts. How's that for you?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, the Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
All the leaves are brown, and the sky is gray, and the sky is gray. I've been for a walk on a winter's day. I've been safe and warm.
California dreaming. For a lot of us foreigners out here, myself included, went out west back in the 70s, left New York, made a life for myself. Hasn't been easy, but it worked. See, this is the beauty of a welcoming, accepting, tolerant place. It brings out the best in the best and the worst in the worst. Let me repeat that. It's not either one thing or the other. A welcoming, accepting, ultra-tolerant society will often bring out the best in the best and the worst in the worst, and that's what I see going on out here now. People have made great lives for themselves out here, and others have destroyed themselves out here because of the tolerance, the ultra-tolerance at that. So it really is a societal problem, this homeless business. There are those who are bad, and they, as the man just said in the last hour, if you were listening, he himself is a homeless man living in the bushes of San Jose, California. And he said, Michael, I agree with you. Most of them are bad people. These were bad children. They were bad, bad children. They were the ones who stole your school books. They were the ones who kicked you. And that's why they're on the bottom. And he said, I wish I didn't have to be around them. And he said he's heading up to, I think, North Dakota to a church group who's going to help him. Let me explain something to you about life that I've found to be true anyway. You can get yourself in a place that isn't working. Let's say you hate where you're living. Most people don't like where they're living. They can't stand it. They want something bigger, airier, safer, in a better neighborhood. And they realize no one's going to give it to them. So they try to figure out, what can I do to make more money to get out of this place? I mean, I'm stuck. If I don't do something, I'm going to be stuck here the rest of my life. Well, that's the beginning of growth. You have to say, all right, so either I'm going to go back to school and get a skill or some knowledge that I can parlay into a better job and move to a better neighborhood. Maybe I can get out of the boondocks and move into a city if I want, if I make more money. I can room with someone. Rooms are very expensive in cities. San Francisco, you won't believe what people are paying. $2,000 for if they can get it, $3,000 for a room, $3,000 a month for a single room in someone else's house. A month. So you got a young person, college graduate, they go to work, they can't make the money to live here. All right, so what are you going to do? That's how the suburbs developed. This is not the first generation to face that. There's nothing wrong with the suburbs. Actually, you may wind up liking it better. And then you become part of the sneered at bridge and tunnel crowd. I mean, when I told you when I was a kid, my dream was to live in the West Village of New York. I had the apartment all picked out. Brick walls, studio apartment, McDougal Street area, opened up on a very charming little curvy street. I wanted to live there so badly. I couldn't. So I had to live in a terrible apartment in Queens, New York. Didn't kill me. It made me decide I had to get out of there. I couldn't stand the subways. I couldn't stand the buses. I wrote poems about my raincoat and how it smelled after I came home at night on the subway. It just smelled of the electrical smell of the subway. Would you believe it? I remember writing a poem that said, my raincoat, it smells, I don't know, I can't remember. I don't want to botch my own poetry, but it was pretty good. I wish I could find it. But I couldn't even stand the smell of my raincoat because it picked up the electrical smell of the subway. Not the human smell, the electrical smell. It stuck to me. I knew I was in a prison. I had to get out of there. Well, okay, it's many decades later. Here I am, worked very hard, still working very hard, very happy to do so. Glad God gives me the strength to go on. And I still want to improve my life. I'm still working to improve myself, whether in this area or that area. I'm always thinking about what I can do to improve myself. I don't know why I'm made this way. I don't know how. I don't know how to recondition myself. Why can't I rest on my laurels? Because I don't know. I'm not made that way. But is everyone motivated the same way? My mother, when I had this discussion with my mother, God rest her soul, when she was alive, I would talk to her about this. She said, some people are not as strong as you are. They just can't do it. It doesn't mean they're evil. They don't have your willpower. They don't have your strength. They don't have your brains. So I said, well, what are you supposed to do with them? Well, what do you do with them? We spend billions of dollars a year doing with them. Every service available to humanity they have here in America. Now, top this off with the illegal immigrants who are here, sucking the system dry. Sorry to tell you, they do not all come here to work. You just go to any supermarket and look at the people using food stamps and what they are buying with the food stamps, and then see the cars they get into. I get reports almost weekly from people who are outraged when they see immigrant families getting into expensive automobiles after buying luxury goods in a supermarket. They cannot believe it. They laugh, basically, if you look at them. They get into a Mercedes and drive away, the whole pack of them. You think that there's no abuse in the system, then you're blind. You're living in a Pollyanna-esque world. So we're talking about how to solve the bum problem in America. It's a savage town hall on the bum problem in America. Something that Sheepy Blitzer should be covering. Something that Megyn Kelly should be covering. They won't touch the subject. They're afraid of the subject. They're afraid they'll be called bad or evil because they'll talk about the bums in the streets of our cities and what they're doing. Go out with your cameras and show what they're doing. You have all these news trucks in San Francisco. I love it. All these news girls running around. They're looking for someone with blood in the street or a fire to report. When have you last seen them show the disgusting mess that the bums are leaving in the streets of San Francisco? All these antenna trucks running around. I don't know what they cost, $1 million a piece more. Have you last seen any of these morons in the local news business going around and taking a camera in the streets and showing the dirt? I can show you some streets if you'd like them. Or the broken roads, Van Ness, Lombard, breaking your car alignment, and asking where the money goes, doing actual investigative reporting. Ask where the money goes, the highway funds, where have they gone? Not one news person does this in any city in America anymore. So it leaves the rest of us saying, well, we got to talk about it at least. Maybe in the age of Trump, something will get done. I think it will get done. It's going to take a long time because national security is at the top, building up jobs is at the top. He has his priorities. So he's going along slowly, but surely he's got the news on the run now. All of the sheepy blitzers, now they're terrified. I don't care what they're saying, they're running scared. The whole media is now backed up. They're all running scared because they know that we, the people, can see right through them. You know, I've done it for 20 years, but I'm just a talk show host. But when the president starts to call them fake news, that's another story. Now they're running scared. Now they know that the lid has been lifted off them, and they're seen for what they are, nothing but propagandists for the far left, if you even want to call them the far left. I wouldn't even dignify them by calling the news people, let us say, mouthpieces for the far left. It's something even more sinister than that, I think. So how do you motivate the bums? I have a solution. I'm giving you a solution. It's a town hall meeting today. You build homeless villages outside of cities in cheap lands, on cheap lands. You force them to stay there, to clean up, no drugs, no alcohol, and work. They've got to grow vegetables. They've got to help build the shelters and maintain the shelters. And there are penalties for not doing so. It motivates them. It's that simple. And what if they don't do it? What do you do then? Well, there's an answer to that solution as well. You give them a less choice. It's like kids in school who act up. Again, I have to go back to when America made sense. When I was young, it did make sense. There were bad kids and there were good kids and there were ordinary kids. And we had schools for all varieties of them. So if a kid was a troublemaker and he wouldn't listen to the teacher or he'd get into fights with the teacher, they throw him out of the school and they put him in I don't know what it was called, 7-Eleven schools. I don't remember what it was called. It was for the kids who were real troublemakers. They put him in a special school for troublemakers. And then there were teachers who taught them, who liked working with the tough kids who were crazy. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed beating them back down mentally, or if that, in some case, that had beat them down physically, and they did so. And everyone looked the other way. If the kid wanted to punch the teacher was stronger than the kid and punched him back. And guess what? There were no reports. There were no lawsuits. The lawyers didn't come after the teacher. And you know what? The kids who could be, let's say, rechanneled, thanked them for it in the long run. They saved their lives. If the kids couldn't even conform to those schools, they were then sent to reform schools. If they couldn't work in the reform school, they were sent to prison. There was always another rung of hell that they could be sent to in order to control the impulses of some negative behavior. They don't have that anymore because that's called discrimination. It's called discrimination to call someone stupid who's stupid. It's called discrimination to call someone bad who's bad. This has to change. Am I going to change it today? No. No, I'm not going to change it today. But I'm talking about one of the greatest social problems in America today, which is the bum problem. Now, don't think I'm a lily in a valley here who's never seen this before. Remember, I grew up in New York, in the suburbs largely. I was born in Manhattan, but I grew up in Queens, Bronx, Queens. But my dad had a store which was then a slum on the Lower East Side of New York. Today it's very fashionable. The same garbage tenements. The apartments cost over $1 million or more in these junk buildings. I can't believe it, but that's what's going on. And everywhere you go on the same street where his little store was is one bar after another. 2 in the morning, the hipsters are smoking their cigarettes and studying global warming while high, I guess. But the streets are filled with them. But nevertheless, when I was a kid there were bums in the street. My father didn't pick on them. He didn't ridicule them. He didn't walk around saying, look at him with derision. He didn't. There was a place called the Bowery. Bowery bum. The winos. They'd flop in the doorways, or they would sleep in the cheap walk-up, hotels, 50 cents a night. And when they couldn't afford the hotel because they drank their money away, they slept in the street. And if it got cold, they did something very interesting, the hobos or the bums. And they didn't call them homeless in those days. That was an invention of the 60s. That's a Marxist construct. The bums would pick up a garbage can and throw it through a store window and get arrested so they can go to prison. I said, what's that about, Dad? Why do they want to go to jail? He said, he would laugh at me. He said, what do you mean why they want to go to jail? It's warm. They get a meal. They get cleaned up. They get showered. They get taken care of. So in the winter, the bums were off the street. They throw a trash can through a window. So in other words, he saw it for what it was and told me what it was all about. And it's no different today. Only today we have whole armies of nonprofits, whole armies of bureaucrats that make their living off the bums, and they're not going to go away. You talk about draining the swamp, and you think it's only in Washington. What about the swamp of nonprofits and the swamp of bureaucrats who make money off the social problems that we want to solve, and they don't want to solve it because they'd be out of a job? What about that problem? Back in a minute to discuss it right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Now, tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Western, the travel ban takes effect at airports on the East Coast and everywhere else in America. Trump's travel ban sets in, and we are going to see chaos. Lawyers have set up shop at JFK Airport to help the illegal aliens from Libya, Syria, Iran, Somalia, Yemen, and Sudan. Now, visa applicants from these 6 Muslim-majority countries are going to have to prove a relationship with family already in the U.S. Now, you know they're going to fake it. You know and I know that the 1,000 lawyers that were put out there by these left-wing fanatics will make up stories that they have relatives. Camille Mackler, there are names to the people who are undermining America and undermining the president. One of them is Camille Mackler, in my opinion, director of so-called legal initiatives at the so-called New York Immigration Coalition. She said, we have an army of over 1,000 lawyers who have their back, meaning the immigrants' back, and are ready to go back out to JFK if that becomes necessary. Isn't it great that we have such great lawyers in America and that they're going to be protecting people coming in from these countries, some of whom may be terrorists or hate America or hate Americans, and we have no way to know it? Isn't it great to see what do-gooders can do, how much good they can do? Isn't it great to see how much evil do-gooders can do? Lawyers set up shop at JFK Airport as President Trump's travel ban takes effect. What sane person would open their doors to a flood of immigrants from these Muslim-dominated nations such as Libya, which is run by warlords, Syria, which is involved in a civil war, Iran, which is an America-hating nation, Somalia, run by warlords, Yemen, a terrorist-infested nation, and Sudan, a tribal nation filled with, well, unknown people. Let's put it to you that way. Who would want more of these people here? What are they going to contribute to this society? Please don't tell me that they're all Albert Einstein coming here to break the codes of nuclear physics. They're not. They're not like your grandfather. Many of you are confused. Many of you confuse yourselves and say, well, I'm an immigrant's grandson, and why is someone from Sudan different than me? Just because they look different than me. I heard it all before. You've been brainwashed, kiddo. They brainwashed you into thinking that they are just like your grandfather, but they're not. There's a big difference between these people from Libya, Syria, Iran, Somalia, Yemen, and Sudan. You want to hear the difference? You want to hear it? Ask them. Read what they read. Go to their houses of worship and get a translation of what they're actually listening to. And you will find out they're not like your grandfather. They are listening to round-the-clock anti-American hatred in many cases. Yes, you heard me. Everybody knows that. Never mind the sugarcoating of the left-wing lawyers. But the fact is that lawyers are setting up shop at JFK Airport as President Trump's travel ban takes effect, and 1,000 lawyers are ready to help the illegal aliens at the airports. And the one behind it all is Camille Mackler, Director of Legal Initiatives at the New York Immigration Coalition. Where is the New York American Coalition? Where is the Director of Legal Initiatives at the New York Legal Citizen Coalition? Where are they? Why don't we have 1,000 lawyers ready to fight these lawyers? They're trying to tie up the courts. They're trying to flood in as many of them as they can. This is coming to an end. I can guarantee you as I sit here, after the Trump revolution, which is in place, and now he's really dug his heels in, the news media is on the run. The sheepy blitzers are braying and running for the woods. The next to go are going to be all of these left-wing lawyers. As sure as I'm sitting here, you're going to see Senate hearings on these lawyers. As sure as my name is Michael Savage, and this is the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
We are talking about the biggest problem in America. which is the bums in the streets of San Francisco, New York. Name your city. I don't care what city you are in. Nobody will talk about the problem because of the laxness of liberalism, the proliferation of drug-addicted criminals in the homeless population is leading to a meltdown of the society that we all live in. Now, if you think this is happening by chance, you're mistaken. Do you know how much money is being made by middle women and middle men on the bum problem? You have any idea what kind of money the so-called homeless departments make? Well, let's take one city, for example. Here in San Francisco, one of the most dysfunctional cities in the world, a third world city posing as a first world city, with a Queen Anne front and a Mary Ann behind, we know that they spend at least $305 million in direct costs for bums. But what do they spend in indirect costs on the bums in the streets? What do I mean by indirect costs? Well, that would be police, that would be firemen, that would be EMTs, that would be legal services. How much does that cost us? Don't know. What about Berkeley, California? Berkeley, California, the little city filled with anarchists who put on masks and then teach at Berkeley by day. The city spends $17.7 million in federal, state, and local funds on an array of programs and services for bums. That works out to about $18,000 per homeless bum. $18,000 per homeless bum. And how much do the managers of these homeless services divisions make? Do you know what their salaries are? I do. Your hair will stand up when you find out all of these sanctimonious, fraudulent liberals who go to their committee meetings like they care about the bums. They don't care about the bums. It's a business to them. And what about the drugs and the alcohol that's sold to the bums? Where does that money go? Where do the welfare checks go? Probably to the drug dealers and the liquor stores, right? So you see, it's a big business to keep an entire underclass of bums living on freeways. If you drive from the Oakland airport along the corridor, the 80 corridor, over to Pinole or up in that area, you'll see an encampment of homeless bums off the highway that'll make you won't know what city you're living in. You'll say this can't be so. From Oakland to Berkeley, you can count one encampment after another living on the freeways. Now, I want to ask you something. Do you think that there are no health-related risks to the overall population, such as lice, such as typhus, such as hepatitis? Do you have any idea? Where are they defecating? Where are they urinating? Now I read this story. San Francisco to pay undocumented immigrant, that's an illegal alien bum, $190,000. Do you know why? Do you know why the city is paying $190,000 of the taxpayers' money? He claimed he was reported to federal immigration authorities in violation of the city's sanctuary city ordinance. Now, I would take the lawyers for this illegal alien. I would deport the lawyers as enemies of the state. But, of course, I'm just dreaming. See, I live in California where dreams are permitted. I'm dreaming for clean streets. I'm dreaming for streets that are safe. Do you know that there are districts in San Francisco, and I'll name a few, probably in New York as well, which has the highest homeless population in America, and we're going to talk about that. I have a list of the top 10 homeless cities in America with the highest populations. But I don't want to call them homeless. That implies they're entitled to a home. I don't know that a home is encoded in the Constitution, is it? Where's it written that you're entitled to a home? I mean, when I was young, I wanted to live in the West Village of New York. I wanted a brick-lined apartment. Just a studio, mind you, with a little garden. But I couldn't afford the $135 a month for that apartment. God knows what it costs today. So I had to live in Queens, in a neighborhood I didn't care for. And I had to go in a rotten subway to get into Manhattan to my job. That's the way it is. Then when you have a family, you can't afford to live in New York or Queens, so you move to Nassau or Suffolk, if you can afford to live there. That's how the suburbs develop. But if you tell that to the moronic millennials who think they're entitled to a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, they tell you that you're not being fair, that they're entitled to live in Manhattan because that's where they want to live. And if they want to live there, they should have a right to live there. And if they want health care, they have a right to health care. That's crazy. No, there's no right to anything on this earth. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is all you're promised. The rest is up to you. Now, I have had enough of the bums. There are people living in the Mission District in San Francisco and other districts, the Castro. They cannot come out of their houses. They're assaulted by bums. Bums are encamped on their doorstep. They're defecating on their doorstep, stealing their mail, threatening the owners. People ride this underground subway system here called BART. They get out on the 16th Street subway stop, I'm reading, and they're assaulted by a homeless army of violent felons who harass them, exhibit themselves, defecate, urinate. The people have created watch groups, 50, 60 people, liberals, all good liberals, bleeding heart liberals. They can't live in their own houses. They thought that by moving in there and cleaning up their house, the neighborhood would clean up, but it didn't. And the supervisors come over. The supervisors come over and do nothing. This is what liberalism does to a city. It destroys it. Top 10 cities with the most homeless population, as you well know. New York, number 1. Over 70,000 bums in the streets. Los Angeles, 43,000. Seattle, 10,000. San Diego, 8,600. D.C., 8,300. These are known statistics. San Francisco, total homeless, about 7,000. That's nonsense. It's much higher than that. The real population of bums in San Francisco is between 10 and 20,000, 10 to 15,000. San Jose, Santa Clara, they say 6,500, much, much higher. Boston, 6,200 bums. Las Vegas, 6,200. Philadelphia, 6,100. Now, I recognize as a compassionate human being who takes care of animals that human beings come first, and I have compassion for human beings, even bums, even junkies. I have compassion for them. However, I have compassion for the social fabric of America. The cities are becoming uninhabitable because of liberalism, which is catering to the bums. What is your solution to the bum problem? I'm going to ask you a question. Here's one. Would rehabilitation bum camps help? Work camps for bums. Rehabilitation, you give them the medical care they need, but you don't give it to them in the streets. You don't let them pollute the hospitals. You don't let them threaten the EMT workers. You build shelters for them outside of city limits, in cheap land, in rural areas, and you house the homeless in these work camps. You give them all the medical care, social services care that they now get, but you do it in a one-stop shopping place. It's much more efficient. It cleans up the streets. What's wrong with that idea? I'll tell you what's wrong with that idea. The lying lawyers, the illegal lawyers, the ACLU. You talk about fake news. You know, the fake news girls are on the run right now. They're terrified. They know the people are onto them. I mean, I've been talking about them for years, but they're frightened now. You look at the Wolfies, the Sheepy Blitzers, you look at the Woodpeckers, they're frightened. They know the people know who they are. They've been exposed. But what about the fake lawyers? What about the fake lawyers who use their law degree to destroy society, primarily those in the American Civil Liberties Union? They have nothing to do with civil and liberties. They're advancing a communistic agenda to destroy the society. Why are they free to ply their illegal trade in this country? Who gave them the power that overrides the power of the people? Who gave a few crazy lawyers in the ACLU the right to give more power to illegal aliens, more power to bums, more power to junkies, more power to molesters, more power to mass murderers than to the average person? Who gave them that power? Nobody. They just took it. We're going to have to blow the lid off this bum story. It has to stop. Trump has to get around to fixing the streets of America. He has to clean up the homeless problem, and there are solutions to it. There are compassionate solutions to the homeless problem. You don't have to just wring your hands and say nothing can be done. There are solutions that can be given for the homeless bum horror. Now, many of them are mentally ill and or criminals hiding in the homeless population. There's a solution to that problem. And one of them is to either reopen the mental hospitals, which is not going to happen, or build entire homeless encampments outside of cities in lands that are inexpensive and move them there against their will with their lawyers. That's right. When Marvin, the ACLU attorney, opens his big fat trap and his big glasses get steamed up with outrage and indignation about how you're violating the constitutional rights of a bum who has the right to defecate in the mailbox or exhibit himself to your 5-year-old daughter, you say to Marvin, you know what, Marvin, you may have a point, but I'm going to ask you something. Why don't you move into the homeless encampment that we're building for them in the middle of the Nevada desert so you can give them the services that they require? We'll fix you up with email. We'll fix you up with Twitter. You can send pictures, whatever you want, Marv. And you could live out there with them and take care of them and their homeless needs out there. You could be their lawyer. Okay, you're going whether you want to or not because you know more about them than anyone else. You've shown that you know more about them, Marvin, from the ACLU. So by government decree, we're moving you into the homeless camp in the middle of the Nevada desert. It'll be air-conditioned, don't worry. We're not there to hurt you, not there to torture you. They're going to get the medical care, the social services care that they need, and they're going to work. They're not just going to sit on their behinds and shoot up drugs. They're going to work. They're going to clean up that camp. They're going to raise the food. They're going to cook the food. They're going to do everything that can be done in that environment to take care of themselves. And at the end of that time period, they will be somewhat rehabilitated, Marv. But you have to be rehabilitated, Marvin. And in order to rehabilitate you, we have to take away your law license, just temporarily, for having abused the taxpayer by using a law in order to destroy the law. You see, Marvin, something you didn't learn at Harvard Law is that in order to have civil rights, you have to have a civil society in order to have those rights. And you've destroyed the civility of our society, Marvin. Homelessness is a misnomer. There's no such thing as homelessness. It's not correct. It's not a correct word. It's a word of the left. The correct word is bum. Bum, vagrant. There used to be vagrancy laws in America. Can you believe there was a time in America that if a bum slept on a bench in Central Park, took up the bench that was put there for hardworking citizens or retirees to sit and enjoy Central Park, a cop came along with a nightstick and tapped him on the shoe and made the bum get up in the morning and move on. He didn't let him lay there on newspaper taking up the whole bench and then walk into a bush like an animal to relieve himself. Nobody would have put up with that kind of behavior. So the cop tapped the bum on the foot. The bum knew to move on, or else he would have been given a shellacking, thrown into a paddy wagon, and put into a police station, and God knows what happened to him then. But it usually encouraged them to go get a job, like as a what? Dishwasher? Does anyone really want to wash dishes? No, but people wash dishes when they're desperate, and they have to. I once washed dishes when I was 14 years old because I lost money in a card game. I was afraid to go home. I lost all the money I had in a neighborhood card game. So I went to work in a luncheonette. I didn't mind. I was glad that the guy gave me the job. He felt bad for me, the street corner up there. He says, all right, Michael, here's the thing. Put your hands in there. I had dishwater up to my, whatever. I worked till midnight. I don't know what I made, a few bucks, who knows. My father called the police. He didn't know where I was. He came in white-faced. He didn't know where I was. Once he saw, there's a funny story. He called the cops. They didn't know where I was. Something happened. And somehow he got the word I was working in the candy store up on the corner there on Union Turnpike. And he came in and he looked over the counter. He didn't say one word other than, I understand, you're working. To him, work was sacred. That was enough. That explained everything. I didn't have to say a word to him. He didn't ask me why I was washing dishes. He didn't ask me, why didn't I call him? He just knew I was working. That was good enough for him. Because there's a dignity to work. And that dignity of work has to be taught to the bums in the streets of our cities. But it has to be taught to the bums in Congress. It has to be taught to the bums in the mayor's offices. It has to be taught to all the bums who steal our hard-earned taxpayer money and do whatever they want with it. That's what has to be done. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Darkness created by the progressives in America, we have very good news. During the Trump revolution, another win for us today. The House just voted to strip federal funding to so-called sanctuary cities. Let me repeat that. The House of Representatives voted today to let the federal government strip grant funds from so-called sanctuary cities that have policies in place preventing them from cooperating with federal officials on immigration. This is such a great day for us, because it's bound to clear the Senate as well. And this No Sanctuary for Criminals Act will put pressure on these cities like San Francisco and New York. You name the city that has a large immigrant population, mainly illegals, and you will see sanctuary city policies in effect. Well, now the federal government can deny them grants from the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security. This is a response to Republican demands that sanctuary cities are actually improperly refusing to cooperate with federal officials on immigration, and prevents those cities and those people who want to comply with the law from ensuring that dangerous and possibly criminal illegal aliens are detained and deported. So towards this end, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement just today are now allowed to ask local law enforcement officers to detain someone suspected of being deportable for an extra 48 hours. This is amazing. Democrats like Representative Louis Gutierrez, so-called Democrat from Illinois, a bankrupt state. Listen to this. Listen who's talking. One of the leaders of the bankrupt state of Illinois, Louis Gutierrez, blasted the bill as a means for Republicans to distract from other issues. He said, health care not going well? Let's hate on some Mexicans today. The Republican Party has had Mexican fever. He's 100% wrong. He is using racially charged terms to cover up the fact that his state is bankrupt because of people like him who impose laws upon the people that have bankrupted the state. But let's get back to the bigger issue. The bigger issue is that the House just voted to strip federal funding to sanctuary cities. Now, in the city of San Francisco, which has a budget of about $10 billion a year, $1 billion of that comes from federal money. That's 1/10. I had Congressman from Texas on, remember a few months ago? Wonderful congressman from Texas who sat on the committee that sat on the budget that overlooked Culberson, Congressman Culberson, great man. He said he was going to step on the air hose. I like that Texas phrase. I'm going to step on the air hose of funding through the Justice Department funding, which he controlled. Well, he just did it today. We should get Congressman Culberson on for tomorrow, and he should take a victory lap. This is the Savage Nation. Thanks for listening. The phone number's not important. The website's michaelsavage.com. Thank you for listening, and let's solve the homeless problem together.
Savage.